Let's get ready to rumble!
Hello and welcome to Netflix versus Cinema, in the movie podcast that is coming to you in the week of the Oscars. The Oscars are about to happen. By the time you listen to this, the Oscars will have happened. My name is Tosin. I am the host. I am based up in the Midlands in the UK. And joining me as always on the Isle of Wight is Sharon Bollen.
Hello.
Hi, Sharon. Now, Sharon, I don't know about you, but I know we've spoken about this before on the podcast, but I think this year is the year in which I am the most... I don't think I've ever been as nonplussed about awards and the Oscars and all that kind of stuff as I have been this year. I know we recently had the BAFTAs, a whole bunch of films won, and I was like, meh. There was like no emotional investment, no emotional reaction of, oh my god, I really wanted that film to win. It was just kind of like yeah, okay, cool, yeah, those happened, yeah, whatever. I don't know about you, but that's the way I'm feeling.
No, I'm the same. I don't actually even know who was nominated this year. Normally there's a bit of buzz about the best films, and I couldn't tell you what the films are this year. And with the BAFTAs, I got confused over what was the nominal cinema release and then went to Netflix. So films I thought of as Netflix films were in the nominations. So I was certainly confused about how they qualify. And yeah, because there's a lot of there, I thought, I don't remember that having a cinema release.
Well, and I think this might be part of the problem. It might be the film landscape, which is one of the things we nominally talk about on this show. So if you're new to this show, what we do is that we tend to go to the cinema, watch a couple of things, go home, watch a couple of things, rate them all out of 5, and see where money has been better spent this week. Now, the line was getting massively blurred between what is cinema and what is streaming for a while before the pandemic happened. And then the pandemic came along and really blasted it out of the water, because there was a whole bunch of things that you were expecting to show up in cinemas that never made it to cinemas and just showed up on some streaming platform, sometimes with absolutely like no publicity, no fanfare. They were just there. And there were some things that like even you had HBO Max, who said that they were going to release all the big things, like Dune, they were going to release it at home, and there was this uproar of, oh my god, you got to show that on the cinema screen. And then you have things that are like, there's one of the big films for the Oscars is a film called Coda, which stands for Child of Deaf Adults. Yeah, and that is an Apple film. If you go onto Apple, when Apple are trying to get you to pay for their stuff, Apple have Coda, yeah, you can watch Coda, look, ooh, we're going to get an Oscar and all our Oscar nominations and all that. Apple put that up front and center. And that film, most people would have seen it on Apple TV Plus. It was in a cinema at some point for maybe 2 weeks to qualify for the thing. But it is, so essentially it was, Apple bought it, but I think that most of these films, they will have some sort of clause in there, or Apple will know that for their own good, it's best to make sure it has the minimum theatrical run required to qualify for awards. So I think maybe because of this sort of fragmented, this is all over the place, and you might never have watched that unless you have paid, like, I saw something where they were trying to say that all of the streaming services, if you're going to have all the streaming services for a whole year, it was going to cost you over £2,000 to have all the streaming services. So there's going to be a whole bunch of films that are going to be on some service somewhere that you would not have had access to unless you figure it out somehow. So that might be part of it. And so, but all these films will have met the technical requirement to be nominated, because they would have been in cinemas for at least 2 weeks somewhere, sometime, probably nowhere near where you live. So, because obviously, I mean, you're on the Isle of Wight, I'm in the Midlands, it would probably be in London somewhere. So those are films that we're not going to get to see in the cinema.
Do festival screenings count, or does that not count as a general?
I do not believe festival screenings count. It has to be general release where people actually have to pay tickets to go see the film. That it has to have been there to do that, because sometimes festival screenings, films are shown in festivals, and it might be 2 years before the film actually makes it to cinema. So festival screenings do not count. So yeah, all in all, just to say that this year, awards, all that kind of stuff, not that bothered. The only thing that I think actually got it made me prick up my ears and go, okay, cool, I'm happy about that, was there's an actress called Joanna Scanlon, and she won
she
Best Actress
for a film
Yes.
I'd never heard of.
Yeah, I'd heard of the film. I never found it anywhere. I still don't know where I can watch it. It's called After Love,
After
I
Love,
believe.
yes.
Yeah, After Love. And Joanna Scanlon is an actress who I love, and she is English. She's English. Well, I don't know whether, is she Northern or is she? The thing I know her for is her playing. There's a TV show called No Offense, and she plays this sort of like chief superintendent or whatever the term is in like a police force in Manchester, and she has this one line that is in the trailer for No Offense when the first season, before the first season was released, where they're talking about taking risks, and she just asked her entire squad, she's like, so does anybody else think that level of risk is sexy? And her delivery on that line, ever since I've heard that line, I'm like, okay, I'm in love with this woman. So and she's been doing good work but she's always one of those in the background characters. She's not really like an above the title kind of person. And the fact that she got recognized and the fact that she actually won, but I was like, yes, good. I was like, I would much rather that than Lady Gaga in the House of Gucci, which is a performance that I am kind of baffled is getting nominated for stuff. But I'm getting baffled at anything apart from maybe the costumes from the House of Gucci is getting nominated. But anyway, I'm sure the Oscars will happen, and I will go, whatever.
Because I can't remember who won last year, so I know it was like a lockdown ceremony and it was a weird thing, but I have got no recollection of any of the winners last year.
I was trying to remember this. I can remember Best Supporting Actor. That was kind of Daniel Kaluuya. And I remember Best Actor was Anthony Hopkins for The Father.
Oh, for The Father, yes.
Yeah, I remember Best Film was Nomadland. Best Actress was Frances McDormand. Oh yeah, this is coming back. And Best Supporting Actress was... cannot remember. Nope, can't remember. That one's gone. but yeah, it's But obviously last year was muted, but this year with things being open again, it's all a bit weird. But anyway, enough of us talking about that. Let's get to what anybody who clicked on play came for, which is us whittering on about the films we're going to talk about this week. So at cinemas, what film did you see this week?
At cinema, I saw a film called Dog.
Channing Tatum and a German Shepherd. And I saw, we're with like one word titles this week, and I saw a film called X at cinemas. And at home, what did you see?
I saw another, almost like a single-hander, like
Ooh.
Dog. It was called Desperate Hour with Naomi Watts.
Oh, okay, cool. Desperate Hour. I feel like I've heard the title, but don't know much about that. And I saw at home a film called Fresh on Disney+. Now, I think it is... I have documented well and long and hard on this podcast about how I do not like horror movies. I do not see the point. Why are you trying to watch something whose sole purpose is to scare you, especially slasher movies? And it's weird that this week I seem to have morphed into Sean, and I have seen a slasher movie at the cinema and what is essentially a horror movie at home on Disney+. So I decided, okay, fine. I miss Sean so much that I'm going to watch a slasher. I'm going to go for a horror week. But all right, cool. So I'll tell you what. We'll kick off with X. I'll talk, then Sharon talks twice, then I talk. All right, so let's kick off with X. So X is a what's that the time we're going? X is as I said, it's essentially a slasher film. It's a slasher film that is influenced by slasher films of the 70s. So there's things about this film that are very kind of like almost Friday the 13th. I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you can really see the sort of handprint of Texas Chainsaw Massacre on this film, especially because it's set in Texas. And the idea behind this, and what lends the X of the title its name, is the fact that you have and Sharon, I'm apologize for making you blush. This might offend your sensibilities, but you have a pornographic film crew who are essentially traveling around Texas and trying to find a location in which to film a pornographic film. So it's quite a small crew. You have the performers in the film, you have the executive producer who is dating the person who he's trying to make the star of the film, he's kind of like, yeah, you're going to be a star, stick with me, and by the way, have a relationship with me. So not problematic at all. So,
No triggers there.
yeah, it's like no problematic at all. And so he has that. You have the young director of the film whose girlfriend is a sound recordist, played by Jenna Ortega, and you have what's her name? Brittany Snow and Kid Cudi, or Scott Mescudi as he goes nowadays, but playing the main sort of actors in this film. And it's about them trying to find this place, and they find this secluded farm. I mean, everything about this, it's just kind of like, you tick off the box. Secluded farm in the middle of Texas, check. Old man and old woman who are a bit reclusive, who own the farm, check. And they say, okay, cool, can we just rent your guest house? So they have the guest house, and once they have the guest house, they're in the guest house, but nobody knows. Like, the people in the old man and woman in the house don't know what it is that they're doing in the guest house. And in the manner of horror movies, you probably already know where this is going. Bad stuff starts to happen to people.
What are the odds?
Bad stuff starts to happen to people. And I think this is one of those films that is very knowingly being this type of film. So this film is going, yeah, it's no surprise that people are going to get killed. It's no surprise that they're going to get picked off one by one. It's no surprise that when somebody says, go downstairs into the basement and get that thing, that is a bad idea. You can see that's a bad idea, but the character's going to do it anyway. It's no surprise, and all these different things. And I think it's very knowingly made like that. As someone who's not a big fan of those films, I can't see everything that they're referencing, and I maybe can't quite get the nudge, wink, wink about it. The thing that I think is a bit different is because it's focusing on films, it's taking its lead from films of the 70s. And in that time, people who were making horror movies, and I think it does this sort of clever mirroring thing where it's mirroring scenes in the porno that they're shooting with scenes in the horror movie that you're watching, if you get what I mean. So they show you a scene, and then they show you this, and they show you the scene, and they show you this. Don't worry, not the main bits that you would expect in the horror, but like, all the sort of like the setups of, oh, my daddy's not around, what are you gonna do about that? All that nonsense. and so like they're mirroring the both of them, and I think that there is some commentary being made about the nature of the porn industry and the nature of the horror industry, especially in the 70s, and how they were both a little bit maverick, and they were a little bit, the director of the porn film keeps talking about how he wanted to elevate the art and make something that has some sort of social commentary on it. And I know that with horror movies, that's something that they were doing. So in the 70s, the horror movie wasn't just about people getting killed, but there was some sort of commentary going on in there. And in this film, they seem to be making a point. Like, you have the whole thing of the people who have sex in the horror movie die. so it's things, and in this they have this whole thing where the theme seems to be about youth versus age, and whether youth is wasted on the young, and whether older people resent younger people for being young, whether younger people think older people, and there's something in there that I haven't quite sort of like figured out that they're doing, but the motivations for the murders that happen is different from something that I've seen in horror movies before. So the film stars Mia Goth, and in very many ways, this is Mia Goth's film. It is her film. She's the person in the porno who is trying to be made a star, and it's almost as if this whole film was built to make her a star as well. So there's some sort of multi-level meta thing going on. There's bits where I think it's just like it's a slasher thing. There's bits where it has a sense of humor about the genre it is and the kind of things that it's going to do, and about how stupid people are. And for someone who doesn't like horror movies, I didn't mind it that much. It doesn't hang around too long. I think it's probably about 90 minutes long, and
that's the average of the old horror films as well.
Well, yeah, and I think you don't really need to be longer than this. So I would give it a 3 out of 5. Although it did reinforce my thoughts that in a horror movie of this stuff, as long as you get into the cinema, before the first person gets killed, you haven't missed anything, because I was late for this film. And I walked in and I was like, yeah, that all I've missed is the setup. And it made me wonder, in these sort of films, has anything significant that you will miss ever happened before the first person gets killed. I mean,
Not really.
if
And
that's the
it's
case,
interesting because obviously back in the day, film classifications, X was the classification for horror and X was the
yes,
classification for foreign films.
yeah. So yeah, that and that's I think that's why
And
it's
I
called
think,
X.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's a nice little wink. There's some stuff in there that I think people who are more au fait with horror would pick up, and possibly people who are more au fait with porn.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just kind of I think that's a reference, but I don't know. So,
I
so
think one of our friends, Joe, who's been on our previous podcast shows.
yeah,
That's, he did a little review on it when he went to see it with another one of our friends, Happy John.
oh yeah,
I think he picked up on a lot more of the references, but both of them know their 70s horror
yeah.
probably far more than I do. So I know his mini review of it was full of nods to other.
It's one of the. I figured that it had to be full of those. I figured it had to be full of those. The kind of film that it was. It was quite knowing about those things, and I think it does them well. I just don't know enough about 70s horror.
And a lot of these films from the 70s became the video nasties of the sort of 90s, and a lot of the filmmakers of today probably saw these films in that sort of the age of the video.
Yeah.
And so they're come of age as filmmakers themselves. So you can understand how it may seem like 40 years ago, but these films were probably rediscovered 20 years ago. And now those filmmakers are going, you know what? We want to acknowledge the
acknowledge the people who inspired us, and hey, more power to them.
I saw at the cinema in the lockdown, The Boys from County Hell was an Irish horror film, but I could see in that loads of references to films of the 70s, horror films of the 70s, more around the sort of British end, like the American Wales and London types, but there were loads of horror movies, and I probably missed most of the references in that. So I think it's that these people are coming of age in their own right and nodding to their influences.
Yeah, I can imagine so. But that was my thing. I think the biggest thing that I thought about it is I felt like there was enough. It wasn't just a slasher movie where you just kill young people for the sake of it. I mean, it is that, but it's that with a little bit extra on top. I quite like some of the commentary that was going on. I like the way that they intercut scenes from both different films. It makes you wonder why they're doing that. It makes you question that. And also the commentary on age. The commentary on age is I think it's an interesting one that there's many ways in which you can make a film that comments on age. This is just one way that the director Ty West has decided to go. So bully for him. Anyway, so that is it for X. 3 stars for X.
That one. Did I miss
3? No, yeah, 3 stars.
3 stars.
3 stars. 3 stars for X. Right, so we go over to you, and we're going into home territory and stuff that's seen at home, and this is what the Naomi Watts one-hander that you saw. So tell us about this.
This is a film called Desperate Hour, and again, like my other film I'm going to review, it's more or less a one-hander with sort of cameos. So It's very much that sort of whole filmed in post-lockdown world.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Naomi Watts is a single mother. She's been bereaved in the last year. Her husband was killed tragically. She's been left with a teenage son who's a bit disaffected and a little bit shell-shocked still from the loss of his father, with a much younger daughter. And the scene starts with her trying to persuade him to get up out of his room. He'd semi-barricaded his door so to stop her from going in, but she pushes the barricade out of the way, goes and says that you really need to go to school. You've got to get yourself up, and you've got to carry on with living. And so then she says, right, I'm going to go for a run. Your sister's gone to school. I'm going to go for a jog. I'm going to leave it up to you, but you should go to school. And then as she goes jogging into the woods, I don't know where it is. It looked like sort of the Pacific Northwest type.
Oh, in America somewhere.
In America. Mm-hmm. North America, woods and a lot of trails. So she's off jogging basically, and she goes for this long sort of 5-miler into the woods. And then as she's jogging along, she notices that there's a lot of police cars pass her. And then when she's on the road, and then a bit later on, she hears sirens wailing away. And then her phone starts pinging like mad. And basically there's a live shooter event at her son's school.
Oh, wow.
And the first part of the film is her basically trying to establish, did her son go or not? And
Oh.
then as the story unfolds, it's basically she has like the suspicion, could it be her son who is the cause of all this? Because,
Oh.
a disaffected youth
Yeah.
who's got issues, who lives with his mum, and they have access to guns. He's known to be someone who spends a lot of time on the internet. Could he be a shooter? And then as the story unfolds, we begin to find out a bit more, and then I don't want to sort of give any details away to unfold it, but
Yep.
that's how it's sort of built up at the beginning, that and then but the desperate hour is basically she puts into her phone, there's an area where all the parents are told to go to this community centre, and the police will brief you about what's happening at this event. So,
Yeah.
and she puts it in her phone. This is like, okay, so you're an hour away. So she calls like an Uber or the equivalent, and they say, right, okay, we're 20 minutes away. So basically, she starts jogging towards this location,
Location.
going through the woods, and she has a few trips and spills, and she's on the phone to different people trying to say, like, okay, can you find out what's going on, can you tell me what's happening, on to the police, can you tell me what's happening? So you're hearing the whole story, a bit like the phone booth type thing, where
Oh yeah.
it's basically Naomi Watts running through a woods, and then you begin to sort of, the other elements are introduced, but that's the
See,
basic premise.
oh yeah, no, no. I actually quite like films like this, and when they're done well, they are brilliant. Like there's a film called Searching ... which was released a couple of years ago with John Cho, which I think is a modern classic. And essentially, the whole film is this guy trying to figure out what happened to his daughter. But the thing you see for the whole film is his computer screen. So the whole thing is his computer screen. It just goes around him talking to this person, sending this email, doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, I love films. I love it when if they have this conceit and if they can maintain it and do it well, it's brilliant. So because we're trying not to give too much away, do they do it well?
Yes, I mean, in like some of these other films, they sort of kept it realistic, and then one part of it, I just thought, I don't think that would happen. I just don't think that would happen. So they kept it real, and then you had this one sort of flight of fancy. To me, I
Yeah.
was like, that I probably would have had a bit more time for the film. So I think that did detract from it a little bit. But on the whole, Naomi Watts, I think she's always reliable, isn't she?
Yes, yes,
She knows how to deliver. She knows how to deliver sort of like anguished mum, as we've seen in things like The Impossible and other films. She knows how to. She's very good at running. I mean, I'd give her due. She's running most of this hour, so she's certainly a good runner. And she's running whilst talking on the phone, which I don't know if you've ever tried running whilst talking on the phone. You like the phone?
I have done before. Hang on a second. Quiet.
And there's even one bit when she's like texting as she's running
Yeah.
along, and I don't know
Sorry.
about you. I can't. I've got to stand still and I'm squinting, holding my glasses out the way, trying to text. So, all power to you if you can run and text at the same time. Crikey.
I have started learning how to push a pushchair with a baby in it and text at the same time. I have learned from necessity, even though it's probably not a good idea. But I have gotten some of those skills.
So part of this, so enjoyed the film, good film. With the one sort of flight of fancy that I found a little bit just beyond my credibility.
Yeah.
So I thought, the performances were solid. You only see her and maybe sort of two other people that she interacts with. The rest of people are like voice artists or
On the phone, yeah.
or sort of and some few extras that keep their social distancing. So there's very little sort of personal interacting with anyone.
Oh yeah. Oh, like that Tom Hardy film, Lock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought for what it is, for the premise, it's done very well. I think part of it was it's obviously coming from a point of view as like the social commentary on this sort of event. And she's on one point, she's on the phone to her daughter, and she said, "Oh yeah, we did it. We did it. We acted like we did in our drill. We turned the lights out. We sort of hid. We did a duck and cover thing." And I think the sort of social commentary is like
this is what school is like nowadays.
Is what school is like, where you have to learn how to respond to a live shooter event.
Yeah.
So I think there was a commentary on that, and I think it was clear that where they stood on that whole thing is like, what we're putting our children through.
Yeah.
That particular culture, that children have that experience of going to school, is that it is not just swinging your school bag, going to school, having a happy day. They do drills for dealing with live shooter events.
Yeah. So how many
So
stars would you give it?
I would give it 3 stars. I thought, yeah, there's lots to like about it, but there's the odd thing that I thought, no, I can't see that ever happening without you actually getting prosecuted yourself. So I would give it 3.
Right, cool. Naomi Watts, who I recently found out is English. And
Born in England, yeah, and then she was raised in Australia, wasn't she? A bit like,
yeah, I thought she was Australian. My whole life I thought she was Australian, and then I found out, no, she's English. I'm like, what?
there's a few like that who, like Gillian Anderson, I think she raised here and then went to America as a teen and then came back and then back and forward. So when she's here, she's English accent, and when she's in America, she's got American accent.
Yeah, she has 2 accents. So as they have done with everything, there is a term for that. But when she's in England, she has an English accent. When she's in America, she has an American accent.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I've got a friend of mine who's Irish. She was born in Dublin, Ireland, so in proper Southern Ireland. When he's there, he speaks with an Irish accent, and when he's here, you would not know that he had any Irish in his background at all. He can turn it on and off.
Well, it is like I don't turn it on and off because obviously being Nigerian, when I speak with Nigerians for a long enough time, the accent gets thicker. I don't think I totally turn it on and off. Well, definitely not consciously, but because even now I don't think I sound English, but it does change. Right, cool. So that was our first thing in the Netflix arena. And now if we go back to cinemas, what did you see in cinemas this week?
I saw a film called Dog in the cinema, which I think is quite a good companion piece to Desperate Out, because again, it was filmed during the post-lockdown period, and most of it is one person interacting with a dog, and then have other people come in as like cameos almost. So they do sit side by side quite neatly. But Dog is a film about an ex-serviceman played by Channing Tatum who was injured and then invalided out of the army. Ridiculous he was a ranger, I believe, and his platoon a lot of them were injured and invalided out at the similar time. The dog was injured and the dog's handler was injured, and they were all basically invalided out because of the nature of their injuries. And now he is desperately trying to get back into the service. And in order to get back into the service, he has to prove basically that he's fit to do it. And he's been desperately trying to get this certificate of fitness to say, you can come back in because you're no longer a danger to yourself or to anyone else. He had a brain injury, so that would obviously make him more vulnerable in any combat situation. And basically he agreed to his colleague, who was the dog handler, was killed in a car accident, and the family have requested that this officer's uniform and the dog attend the funeral, which is a week away in sort of Arizona, and they're basically up in the northwest, so they're up above Portland, up in the practically Canada. And so he has to travel along and they can't fly with the dog because the dog's injuries. It's not amenable to flying, so they have to drive this dog over 5 days from one top of America down to sort of Arizona. And so he was told that if he will do this, they'll sign his ticket to say you can come in. And so it's almost like you do this for us, we'll do this for you.
Scratch our backs, we scratch yours.
Yes, which I can't think, it's not ethical. It's not safe. But this is where the arrangement is like, no, we're my old buddy in the army and all that sort of thing. What's a ranger? Always a ranger. Then the film progresses. Basically, it's a road trip between this man and the dog. And you get to see, in some ways, it's like about the rehabilitation of him through these sort of series of misadventures. He encounters different people, some sort of not sex workers, they're like tantric, they help people with sort of sexual health by
gotcha.
And he encounters them and he's like, what, hey, I'm in here, and then they're saying, actually your body's in pain, you're in pain, we would like to try to help you. And so the story basically is about both of the dog and his rehabilitation. Now the dog is very sensitive, it's can be quite aggressive, and it can turn on, it gets very stressed, it's always panting because it's stressed. It doesn't like being touched, also it's part of his body because it's like a trigger for aggression. And so most of the time the dog's had to be muzzled, and when it's not muzzled it will be tearing furniture apart, tearing the car apart, and it's sort of, they're both damaged in each their own ways, and they're both struggling. So there's this journey, and as each person you meet, another element of their past is revealed, and another sort of step on the path to rehabilitation is sort of achieved, slowly. And so, but one of the things we don't know at the beginning, or you learn quite early on, is that after the funeral, because the dog is so unpredictable, they don't believe she'll be safe to be rehoused. So they take her to be euthanized, basically.
Yeah.
And so his journey is to take her to the funeral and then take her to the nearest army base where they will safely euthanize her because she's just not safe to be around.
Yeah. So it sounds like it has all the elements of a tearjerker. It sounds like it has the elements of a tearjerker, and also the fact that it's an American road movie. And that is a bit like what we're saying with the one person on screen for most of the time thing. It's something that if it's done properly, it can be really, really good. And I think road movies, when they're done properly, they can be almost sort of like magical and almost sort of like transcendental. And if they're not, they can just be really cliched. Like, this is the point where we meet the old person who has lived a law of life and has a whole bunch of wisdom that's going to pass us down to that, and is going to tell us the one thing now that's going to make, fix our lives for the rest of at least the film. So things like that. So how is this done?
There's elements of that. There's elements of and they can't resist introducing humour because it's a Channing Tatum film. They cannot resist making light of it, and because they're quite heavy on the humour, it does take away some of the pathos.
Yeah.
So instead of you really seeing the emotional journey of this man and this dog, you see one sort of funny incident leading to another funny incident, leading to a sad incident, leading to a moving incident, really like, oh, this is real. Let's take it real. And then it's like humour again. And so where it sort of switches between, and because this will just show my prejudice, because it's an American film, it's got quite a broad humour. It's sort of not terribly subtle, because I quite like the subtle nods where it makes you laugh.
Yeah.
The gesture, because of a look, whereas this is much broader than that. So I find the humour sometimes can be a little bit heavy, and then the words of wisdom again can feel a little bit heavy. Rather than, we'll drop this here and let you think about it. It's like we're gonna really punch you in the face with this.
We gotta ram this point home.
Yeah, and
cue
again,
the strings. Cue the strings.
So there's a moment where it almost like there's a moment where it's like, okay, cry now moment.
Yeah.
I was watching this with a friend, and we were both a bit like, oh, this is, and we were the only ones in the cinema, and we were a bit like, oh, this is a bit emotional, this moment, because we were chatting to each other a little bit, not a lot, but we were both, oh, and you think, there was a bit like a cry now moment. So I could see what they wanted to achieve, but for me, it wasn't subtle enough in its nuances to actually achieve that. But it was a good effort. So I would give it a 3 as, again, like a companion piece. There's elements of it I liked very much. Some of the things were genuinely funny. Some of them were genuinely moving. But those sort of subtle, that sort of flow to me was a little bit lacking to make it a really powerful film. So I would say good effort. Again, it was like the other film talking about, a commentary on life events. This was, again, a commentary on, there's a whole generation of young men who went to Afghanistan and fought in Iraq. And a lot of these men have been cast out into the world, basically on their own.
And
service dogs have been like, we're going to train you up for this one role, and then when that role is finished, we've got no place for you. So it's about taking responsibility for your men and for the other people that you've served your country in whatever capacity.
Because I was getting a little bit of a feeling about this film, like there was a certain genre of films going back to the 70s again. A certain genre of films in the 70s which were about the Vietnam vet getting home, and then what happens to them when they get home, and how you've done this, you served your country, but now you don't fit in society anymore. We don't have a place for people like you in society, so good luck. And I was getting snippets of this, like this, obviously because Afghanistan has some similarities.
A war that went on for a long time.
It has some similarities.
With no real conclusion. It just dragged on.
Has a similar fallout. Has a similar fallout. And I was getting that kind of feel of this. Like, it's kind of like almost, one man traveling across and seeing the state of America and trying to figure out what his place in it is and stuff like that. But anyway, so that's 3 stars for Dog. And So now we go to our final film of this show. We'll see whether we might get back to 3 films in cinema, 3 films soon. I have plans because Sean has essentially been claimed by Thailand now, and I think Sean is pretty much a Thai citizen as far as we know. So when we get a little bit of dose of a Sean, we will be like, yes, thank you, but I have plans.
Be like, thank you, Sean. You can watch all this stuff we.
Yeah. When Sean comes back in and watches over this, I have plans to get us to 3 a week, which involves a guest third person, and we'll see. We'll have it could be like our version of X Factor, Sharon. We can sort of like have people on this, and then we can see what they're like and see whether we like them and see whether they can come back, and they have a tryout for a couple of weeks.
Mute them.
What was that? What?
Mute them. If you don't like, we're just gonna mute this bit.
It's like, what's that you said? What did you say? You said you liked the film. You said you liked the film Pompeii. Mute. Next. It's like, yeah, we know Sean says he liked it, but he's allowed. No, not you. We're not having another one of you in here. Right, okay.
Gone fuzzy. Oh, bye.
It's we're losing you. Get out. Right. All right, but now we go to a final film for this week. And that is a film called Fresh, and it's a film on Disney Plus, starring Sebastian Stan. He of Winter Soldier fame, and Daisy Edgar-Jones. She of I Am Reliably Informed Normal People fame, because Normal People was this thing that was based on a novel by an Irish author called Sally Rooney that was on BBC 3 and was massive right at the beginning of the pandemic, and everybody was watching it, and I never have. So yeah, but that was her real big thing. So
old for that.
Yeah, that everybody knows Daisy Edgar-Jones from that. And I think I'm quite happy for her that she is now beginning to parlay that into other roles, especially in America. And this is her doing, I think eventually I will watch something which Daisy Edgar-Jones actually plays an English woman. But so far, the things I've heard of is she was playing an Irish woman in Normal People, and now she's playing an American. So this is her playing
coming up in Where the Crawdads. I know Where the Crawdads Sing. I think there's an adaptation of that, and she's in that.
Yeah, Where the Crawdads Sing. Something that I saw the trailer for today, and that's what made me think, oh, Daisy Edgar-Jones is making some moves. Yeah. She's making some moves.
But she's getting there.
Yeah, well, no, she's getting there. It looks like they're putting a lot of money behind this. It is very proudly proclaiming that this will be in cinemas only. And I'm thinking that if they're making a big deal about putting something in cinemas, they're putting some money behind it, as opposed to putting it onto a streaming platform, which I can imagine cost less. But so yeah, I'll put aside the fact that I kept confusing her with A, Anne Hathaway, and B, Rebecca Hall, because there's bits of her face that remind me of those two. I know they're different people. If I look for more than a second, I can tell them apart. But but a fleeting glance, I'm like, oh, I saw the thumbnail of this. I was like, huh, is that Rebecca Hall? And then you go in there. So this is Sebastian Stan, Daisy Edgar-Jones, and this is a film in which it is hard to say anything about without spoiling it. Because and a lot of the reviews you hear about this film don't really talk about the film so much as they talk about the reaction of the people who are watching the film to the film, and trying very hard not to tell you anything about the film. Now, and it's something that I'm particularly aware, because I figured out what this film was about based on like 2 lines of a review and the title of the film. I was like, oh, this is obviously what's going to happen. And so I watched the film and I was pretty much bang on. I don't know what that says about me, but until you watch the film, you don't realize. Yeah. So what was that, Sharon?
You've probably seen too many films.
It might mean that I've seen too many films, but I know a lot of people who have seen a lot of films who are still quite shocked by this, and are still kind of like, what the heck is going on? But I was kind of like, that's obviously where it's going. But the basic thing a lot of the films that we've been talking about today, we've used the word commentary quite often, saying this is like a commentary on blah 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 blah. And this film is really about modern dating and what dating looks like, and when people go on apps and how they meet people. And in the beginning of the film, there's a lot of talking about how do people actually just meet people in real life anymore, or what happens when you go on and people go on dates and they meet horrible people. So essentially, as I said, this is like a horror film, and at the beginning, what it is it's like a dating horror film, because it's just like whatever happens, dating sucks. Is what happens, and then Daisy Edgar-Jones's character Noah meets Steve, played by Sebastian Stan, and they randomly in real life they get on, things go on and everything like that, and then they at some point they go away for a weekend in this new budding relationships, and things happen. That is pretty much what it is. Now you would essentially it would be a really boring film if they went away for a weekend, had a lovely time, and came back. So all you know is that things happen. And I am going to stop my review there. And okay. I'm going to stop my review there and say they go away, things happen. Because I would say go watch the film. One of the reasons, as I said, I figured that this was a horror film. I figured it was going to, and I don't like horror films. But because people were talking about this film so much, I had to watch it to see if I was right. Spoiler alert, I was. And B, I had to watch it just so... It was one of those weird things where I was pretty sure I knew what this thing was, but I did not want to read somebody spoiling it for me, if that makes sense. I didn't want to have like what I thought was going to happen confirmed by a Wikipedia page or by somebody being on Twitter, which this is the kind of film that I will do that kind of stuff for. But I will say the performances are good. There are horror film things that happen in this that... But horror film things happening that you know, like how I was saying with X, they happen, but the characters make it a little bit more believable and the performances make it a little bit more believable than what they usually would be. There's a shout out to all the black people in the film. Like there's Jojo T. Gibbs, who plays her best friend Molly, who I think is really, really good. And there's a guy who plays a barman called Dio Kenny, and he is... I feel like they could have done more with him, but he's almost kind of like a commentary on the place of black people in films like this. So, okay. Like he's pretty much driving around and he's making a commentary on what's happening and what his place is in the story as it goes along. So it knows what it is. It has a bit of a sense of humor about some of the stuff that happens. The performances are good. I would give it a 3 out of 5. It is a high 3. But because it was exactly it was kind of what I was expecting to happen that happened, and the fact that I'm not the biggest horror movie fan, and I think maybe because now I have a daughter, there's some stuff that happens in the film that makes me go, ooh, I don't think I like that. But it has stayed with me, and it has made. I'll tell you how bad it was. I watched this film, and then there was an interview with Sebastian Stan and Daisy Edgar-Jones that I did not want to listen to because I did not want to be reminded about this film. So whether that's a good thing or a bad thing that this film has affected me enough that I don't want to listen to an interview because I don't want to be reminded about the film. You make of that what you will. Don't worry, I'm still here. You make of that what you will. But I would give that 3 stars out of 5. So all that's left to do is to say who has won this week. Has it been Netflix or has it been cinema? Sharon,
it's a dead heat.
It is a dead heat. We have had a 3 out of 5 star week. We have had the 3 out of 5 star week, which is not a bad week.
No, there weren't any real duffers in there, but yeah, they were all worth a watch. I think 3's still good.
Yeah, nothing blew us away, but 3's still good. And quite frankly, I mean, after last week, because last week we didn't have a show because there was nothing in the cinema. There was nothing to see in the cinema. I was kind of like, I remember I actually looked at it and I thought it was just my local cinema being rubbish again. And I was just kind of like, what the? And I sent you a message going, is there anything new at the cinema? It was like, no, we've seen it all. There's nothing new this week.
We had to see was on at 3:00 in the afternoon. And I was just like, okay, I'm not going to get to see that one.
Yeah, I don't actually understand why that was. I don't understand what is, because usually when there's a Marvel movie that's been released, I expect nothing pretty much for the next 2 weeks. And this is just like a random week in the middle of the year, and people have missed a trick. No new films being released. Shove your film in that spot because people are going to watch it because it's the only thing on there. I'm like, how did they miss this week? How did they miss last week? I don't get it. But so until next week, when hopefully we will not be having a missed week because there's nothing in the cinema, I think all that's left to say is a goodbye from me.
And a goodbye from me.
Thank you very much for joining us. We will see you again next week. Hopefully.